I should probably change the word burden because it might be received as being negative. It's actually an opportunity, right? And what a privilege to be given such a responsibility to lead, right? Leading is not a right. Leading is a privilege, and it's a fantastic opportunity for anyone.
Hi, I am Lennox Wasara, an award-winning radio presenter and also a scholar at the University of Pretoria. The University of Pretoria is one of the largest contact and residential universities in South Africa, an institution with 7 campuses, 9 faculties, and a business school. While very interesting because our guest is the head of PwC Africa, and University of Pretoria has obtained a 100% pass rate in the April 2021 South Africa Institute of Chartered Accountants test, so the SAICA ITC exams, which is certainly phenomenal. While if you're wondering who am I talking about, our guest today is none other than Dion Shango, the CEO of PriceWaterhouseCoopers Africa. An inspiring story of starting right from the bottom and working all the way up to the top. Dion made history by becoming the first black CEO of PwC Southern Africa from 2015 to 2019. With over 20 years of experience at PwC, Mr. Shango has demonstrated longevity and loyalty to the company, a journey that began after graduating with BCom Financial Accounting at the University of Pretoria. Now, Dion is passionate about transformation and women empowerment, with clear initiatives that have certainly increased the level of representation for women and previously disadvantaged racial groups in the accounting industry. As a family man, the trailblazer has learned so much about work-life balance, doing this whilst raising his children to uphold values of humility, respect, and perseverance, amongst others. Now, moreover, Dion's optimism will certainly inspire you. Have a listen. Welcome to the LeadUP podcast. Today I'm joined by a special guest, joined by Mr. Dion Shango, who is currently the CEO of PwC Southern Africa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lennox. Thanks for having me.
Incredible. Let's talk a bit more about your journey. I mean, you've made history in being the first black person to be the CEO of PwC Southern Africa back in 2015. I think about this and I'm thinking about some of the conversations I've had with people who've done some really exceptional things like you've done, which is truly phenomenal. When you process all of this, what have you made about this landmark achievement?
In a nutshell, I do find myself having to pinch myself, every now and again, Lennox, when I think about the journey and when I consider where I am today. And the way that I like to rationalize it or see it for myself is that I'm a great example of how one can be, or one always is, a product of one's environment. And what I mean by that is, having had the privilege of a strong family foundation as a child, blessed with parents that really prioritized the value of a good education. And then, of course, having been fortunate enough to attend a world-class institution such as the University of Pretoria, just opens up a whole world of opportunities that others out there might not necessarily have. So a little bit of it is really being about at the right place, at the right time, about using the opportunities that come your way, and most importantly, about just being so grateful and thankful for the exposure that you've been afforded, the opportunities that have been given to you by others. I do consider myself as somebody who stands on the shoulders of giants in terms of people here at PwC who have been simply amazing in helping me navigate my career, and who have just really made it their business to take an interest in my development as an individual, as a professional, as a partner here at PwC. So really, really grateful, and it's taken a community to get me where I am today.
Yeah, that's true. It sounds like a true African story. You hear a lot of people talking about, it takes a community to raise one person.
Oh, yeah. It takes a village.
A village, a village. And that gets me to think at length about, who are some of those people that you feel you were really there, instrumental and sensational to helping you get to where you are?
Fantastic, yeah. I mean, look, one notable individual that, and you and I were chatting earlier, that I could never ever thank enough is my predecessor in the role of senior partner for PwC Africa, a man by the name of Hein Buchmann. Hein is somebody that took me under his wing early in my career at PwC. I started with the firm in the year 2000, and through his leadership, his inspiration, his constant involvement, I really have been afforded the most amazing opportunities. I always say that Hein had no obligation to do that for me, but the manner in which he has paid it forward and really made sure that this firm was in a position to really appoint or elect a credible young African leader was something that was extremely visionary of him. It took a lot of guts, a lot of courage for him to do what he did. But he stood by his beliefs and values, and credit to him, and I will always be grateful to him. Outside of the work environment, certainly my family was instrumental. I'm very fortunate in that I come from a family of incredibly strong women, and women that instilled in me at a very young age the importance of values such as perseverance, respect, patience. And here I have to pay tribute to my late grandmother, who was a very strict taskmaster, instilled discipline. But yeah, I always think of her in terms of, reflecting on my journey and where it began. My mother was a teacher, which again just reinforced those disciplines and values of hard work and perseverance. And certainly, that family dynamic, my father very supportive as well, has always been important to me.
You mentioned a couple of people, your family, your predecessor, and with that, I know it's not obviously an easy process, because you also mentioned that your predecessor had come through quite a challenges to try and keep pushing you forward as he did, and with that, certainly doesn't that put a bit of pressure on you to ensure that when you do take over the position, when you do take over the role, you're actually delivering as to what he had promised? So how have you handled the pressure of the position?
The pressure is a constant, I guess. But this is an incredible organization, PwC, right? Because I get the privilege of working with 400 other partners on this continent who are CEOs in their own right. And I feel so blessed to have the partners that I have with me, in that they play a critical role in taking some of that pressure off me. Those that I interact with the most are probably my leadership team, or my exco, if you like, who are all partners, and who go out of their way to ensure that the responsibilities of the senior partner are evenly shared and the burden is carried equally amongst us. People that are world leaders in their own right, and really that I'm really appreciative of in terms of what they do to support me in my role. They make it that much more easier. They make the load significantly lighter to carry. So I feed off the positive energy of our partners, of our people, and they make that pressure a non-event almost. Yeah.
You talk about leadership being a shared burden, so to speak, whilst many people have looked at it as one thing, whereas there's a heroic sort of role where one person bears the brunt on their shoulders by themselves. Well, in essence, I do hear a sense of collaboration and partnership with your key stakeholders, as you mentioned, 400 of them plus around the continent. Tell us a bit more about, now you talk about creating that environment which is positive, and they help you to create that positive environment. what have you done, though, to create a positive environment? Because sometimes people chat and you hear that, well, this person's not really in a positive environment and they're trying to find another positive environment. What can you do as a leader to sort of start creating positive environments if you do want to change the culture in a particular environment?
And I mean, Lennox, I should probably change the word burden because it might be received as being negative. It's actually an opportunity, right? And what a privilege to be given such a responsibility to lead, right? Leading is not a right. Leading is a privilege, and it's a fantastic opportunity for anyone. But you're absolutely right. Leadership is all about creating the right culture. And culture inherently is probably one of the most difficult things to land or to master, right? Culture, for me, is all about inspiring people to consistently exhibit the same or similar behaviors all of the time. And you know how challenging it can be to work with people. So a lot of that culture really has to come from how we as a leadership team hold ourselves up to those whom we are asked to lead, right? And this is where concepts such as servant leadership come to mind, where it becomes incredibly important for you as a leader to be as authentic as what you can be, to be open, to be transparent, and to be as honest as what you can be all of the time. And, you know, if you don't demonstrate that authenticity, people see through that very quickly, right? And in how we engage with our partners and with our staff with a very open, sort of open door policy in leading, availing ourselves and really making time to spend with our people is how we gain the trust. And that trust becomes implicit in the culture that we are trying to build. And ultimately, it's the type of culture that fosters an environment where everyone is inspired to be themselves at PwC, an environment where everyone feels they can bring the best of themselves, the most of themselves, their most authentic self every single day to our various offices and to work every day. So that culture and how it's exhibited and demonstrated by the leadership and how that tone is set at the top is incredibly important.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot about trust over there, which actually leads to my next question I had in mind about trust. I mean, building trust between people is very difficult in essence because there's just so much going on, different personalities, different expectations, and, you know, different traits. So sometimes building trust can be quite an enormous task. But more so in an organization, I guess that could be even more of a difficult one to try and pursue. What I know you've identified, PwC has also identified trust as one of the main aspects you want to build over the next couple of years across the continent. What are you actually doing to build trust? Because it sounds easy, but I tell you, it's not an easy task.
I mean, trust is such a fragile thing, right, Lennox? It takes years, it takes decades to build, and it can be lost at the snap of a finger. As PwC, we recognize that we are firmly in the trust business. The bedrock of our business has been auditing or audit services. That's what we've largely been known for. But of course, we are much more than just auditors these days. But in the over 160 years that we've been in existence, certainly we have become experts at building trust and delivering trust to our clients and other stakeholders. And we take great pride in that. And we realize the important role that organizations such as ourselves have to play in society these days to help and improve and build greater trust in this era of the trust deficit. We live in an incredibly complex world where communities and society out there have lost confidence and trust in so many aspects, so many institutions of life in the world today. Business does not trust government. Government does not trust business. Society does not trust business, and vice versa. So these are all things that we grapple with in trying to reimagine trust and what it means to be trusted and what it is we need to do consistently to build trust. So one way in which we are doing that from an external perspective is to ensure that in everything that we do as a firm, we deliver the highest of quality. We need to make sure that in all our services, in all our interactions with our clients and other stakeholders, people who come into contact with PwC come away thinking, wow, that was really a world-class experience from a quality perspective, quality people, quality services. I would be more than happy to engage with that organization again in the future. So quality is really at the core of what we want to do, and we will never stop investing in quality, and we want to make sure that PwC is associated with the highest levels of quality. Then there is the aspect of building trust internally within the organization. And that again, takes us back to leadership. And really there for me, Lennox, it's about being honest with our people, honest with our fellow partners, and humble enough to say that, the mere fact that we've been entrusted with these roles of leadership does not make us the all-knowing experts of all things within PwC. We will never always have all the answers, right? And building trust is about having the humility to admit it when you don't know and to actually reach out and ask for help from those that you have been asked to lead, incidentally. It's about knowing when to lead, when to be a follower, and when to allow others opportunities to lead. And it is through that open and honest and authentic leadership style, we think we've been able to build trust and improve trust within our organization amongst our partners and our staff.
Yeah, that's interesting. More so to you now, have you had moments in your journey where you've had to be very vulnerable and sort of be, show a sense of openness, right, that you mentioned? Perhaps it might be a colleague or maybe one of the staff members here. I just want to know, perhaps you might have a story to tell.
Look, throughout the career of any auditor, there's always difficult moments. There's always opportunities to ask for help. And I'm one of those people that prefers to use an inclusive leadership style. So the process of what we call consultation is incredibly important in our organization, because we get to grapple with some significant and weighty issues in dealing with clients and other stakeholders. So certainly I'm probably the quickest person I know in asking for help or consulting with others within the organization. I have been in situations where, due to a disagreement with a client, we have been put on the spot and told that if we maintain a particular position, we would be at risk of being fired as the auditors at a particular organization. And when things like that happen, you just stand back and think about your own values, personal values. You think about the values of this partnership which you represent. And certainly you come back to this partnership to get guidance, to ask for help, and to seek greater clarity of what do we do as an organization and what do our values ask of us to do. So certainly in using all of the infrastructure of our firm, I'm a big fan of asking for help from my fellow partners, from people who are experts and much brighter than me, quite frankly, in certain areas of our practice. And I always find that if I fall back onto that infrastructure and the great power of our firm and our partnership, then everything works out at the end of the day.
Certainly, I think that if some people always want to hear secrets from an executive of your kind. And I guess somebody listening now, I guess that's one of the secrets, right? Always being vulnerable and asking questions when you need to. This journey has been quite long for you, I guess, here at PwC. You've literally started here upon graduation from the University of Pretoria. Over 20 years, you've been with the same company. We don't often hear stories of this kind because there's, I guess, a lot of hopping from companies that is happening lately. It could be one of the trends, I'm not sure. But what has inspired you to stay this long with the firm?
I always say that, throughout the 20 years, whatever I did, the firm refused to fire me, no matter how good. But no, on a serious note, it's a funny thing. And you make a very good point, Lennox, that these days, people are a lot more dynamic, right? A lot of our younger staff often tell us that, look, we are not our parents. We don't want to stay with one organization for 20 or 30 years or wait for a gold watch. People think differently. So I think there's a bit of a generational aspect in there that one has to acknowledge, that the world is different to what it was, 20 years ago. Right? Let alone even longer. So people feel that they have better opportunities. People feel a lot stronger about what they want to do with their lives, how they spend their time, in doing things that appeal to them and are fulfilling to the life objectives that they have. And so the challenge that we've set ourselves is to ensure that we create that type of environment here at PwC that allows our people to be able to explore all of the possibilities and interests that they have as human beings and as individuals, whether it is from a societal purpose, whether it is from a personal perspective. We want to make it easy for people to work here and still be able to fulfill other aspects or needs of their lives. From a personal perspective, I've really found this environment to be one where I get to learn something new every single day. And people always get surprised when I tell them that. It's like, the more experienced I get as an auditor and as a leader, the more I actually realize how much I have still to learn. And that's always been so intriguing to me. I simply love this environment of being with clients, spending time with them, helping them think through their most challenging problems. And I guess that people skills aspect really allows me to thrive in such an environment. It's a dynamic environment where you are always with young people. Because of our business model, we have this constant churn of young, new people coming in every 3 years into the system. And I absolutely love that. So it is really, really a people's business. It's a business that allows us the privilege to teach others and to develop them. And that's just been very, very fulfilling for me. And hence I'm still here after 20 years.
It would be untrue for me to think that it's been smooth, and for anybody listening to think that your journey has been relatively smooth. As you articulate your journey, sounds very crisp and sounds like well polished, but in essence it hasn't been like that. So there's been some challenges for sure in the process. What are some of those challenges? You've maybe one that comes to mind, a major one that you felt like, phew, I certainly escaped something there, and that's made me a lot more resilient.
Let me start by simply making it personal and saying, often the work that we do requires a lot of dedication, long hours. And even though we often preach to our people that it's important to have work-life balance, it's not always that easy to achieve, right? So certainly when you work at a PwC or similar organization, that part of your life will be challenged. And there are often times where I think, my goodness, only if I had spent more time with my family during certain years or times as a family. And it's not really about blaming PwC for that. It's just about how you become more experienced at mastering that work-life integration, that work-life balance. So there have been a couple of challenging times in that sense, that when you are in these leadership positions, you have to make those personal sacrifices. Then I guess looking more inward into the organization itself, as a partnership, there have been some years that have been difficult for us, where things have not gone well, and it has been incredibly difficult to maintain the morale or even improve the morale of the partnership. and where we've had to dig deep to remind ourselves of why we are here in the first place. What does it mean to be somebody's partner? And what does it take for us to be able to stand side by side through the difficult times and see our way through them? It requires a significant amount of resilience, mental strength, and the ongoing need to always support one another in the belief that the future that we are trying to build collectively is worth fighting for, right? And really through the strength of our brand, and through remembering what those values are that bring us together and that are common to the PwC family, there's no challenge that we haven't been able to see our way through.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stands out for me is the fact that you allude to how it can be quite difficult to strike that work-life balance. But whilst you had found it to be quite a challenge, I'm sure you've learned some things in the process, perhaps that's helped you to sort of get better at it, because I know that you're a family man and you got beautiful children, whilst also you were trying to instill some values of humility, respect, perseverance, amongst others. Tell us a bit more about how you've sort of learned that and what you're doing now to make it work.
Certainly. I mean, as I was sharing with you earlier, Lennox, that all of us need that foundation and grounding of a family. And that family is probably the most important thing for anybody. I always say that my most important job is probably that of being the best husband and father that I can be, probably even more important than my role at PwC. And certainly I see my family as my rock, my pillar. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. Their support is the fuel that I need to carry me and allow me to operate at my best every single day. That is the role they play and how important they are to me. So certainly in getting older, in being more experienced, you actually realize that sometimes it is more important to put family first rather than put the work commitments first. If you would ask me what are some of the key messages I would share with my younger self, that certainly would be one of them, to say that, look, every now and again, you need to use more opportunities to give priority to your family, as opposed to thinking that work must always come first.
Yeah, that's interesting, because what this does, and it triggers me to think a lot about, where we're recording from, because I guess you leave your house every day to come to this beautiful building, which is probably the most beautiful building in Midrand in South Africa, Midrand, South Africa. So having obviously looking at this beautiful view we have before us as we're recording, tell us a bit more about, the future of work, because we know that a lot of your staff literally don't spend a lot of time in this building, whilst the building is so big, as you mentioned earlier, to house just a couple of thousand people. Where do you see the future of work going, particularly, with the trends we've seen? I've attended a few of sessions with some of your staff from PwC talking about the future of works. I think it was Barry Foster at the time who spoke at length about that. And I found it to be fascinating. So from your side, where do you see this going?
So the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly turned life on its head, hasn't it? And what we used to think represents work, or what work used to look like or is supposed to look like, has certainly been redefined. We've learned so much in these last 20 months of the pandemic. As an organization, we always knew that we had invested heavily in technology, but we didn't really know whether this technology would be able to stand to scrutiny under the type of challenges we've had to work under. I'm delighted to say that our technology has stood up to that test, and we've been able to be resilient from an operational perspective, and we've been able to continue to service our clients seamlessly, and our people have been able to operate remotely, working from home, as it were. We now find ourselves at a precipice in that here we are Some people have enjoyed working from home. Some people want to come back. And what is the right answer? Personally, I have a strong preference for coming to the office physically. Hence, we are here today. Depending on where the various alert levels are from a COVID-19 movement restrictions are concerned, I generally come in 3-4 times a week on average, because again, I enjoy being in the company of my colleagues. I feed off their positive energy, like I said previously. But I'm absolutely convinced, Lennox, that in terms of the future of work, organizations are going to be a lot more flexible in terms of allowing people to work on their terms. Yeah. So that means, yes, our future models will be a lot more hybrid, and some of our people will very well work predominantly from home. But for an organization such as ours, that has some very direct implications for our culture as an organization. It's a culture that is built very much upon human interactions. That is how we foster creativity. That is where we get to fuel inspiration amongst our teams, where people are in one another's spaces, in contact with one another, and really coming up with the best, most creative solutions for our clients and other stakeholders. So that human contact is still important for us, and one needs to consider whether remote working can still enable such a culture. So we are busy thinking through that at the moment, but certainly we, in whatever position we come up with, we will consult extensively with our people as to what it is they want and what it is will work for them, because ultimately we want to retain the best talent. And as I said, we want to create the type of PwC environment that allows everybody to be at their best every single day.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it speaks to, I guess, the changes we're seeing, and leads me to think a lot about the future. But whilst we're talking about the future, more so to your legacy now. I mean, I don't know what if you've given that some thought as to what type of legacy you would love to sort of have when you think about your journey. I know you're very passionate about transformation. You're making so much effort to make sure that there's more women representation in the industry itself, whilst also making sure there's previously disadvantaged racial groups also have the same opportunity and are also well represented. So more so to your legacy, what would you say?
Certainly. So really two parts to that legacy I'd touch on. You've already mentioned one of them, transformation, diversity, inclusion. Again, the type of PwC where everybody feels at home, really, really important to me. In that sense, we've already set ourselves some key milestones and targets in terms of where we want to be as an organization in a country like South Africa, where we want 40% of our partners in South Africa to be of either African colored or Indian descent. And we are well on our way to meeting that target. From a broader Africa perspective, I said to my partners when I was elected to this role some 2.5 years ago, that I thought we could be a lot more united as a firm. And certainly one of the legacies I want to leave is a much more unified PwC Africa that really comes across as one firm when it interacts with anybody external to the organization, regardless of which country one is sitting in, irrespective of the city or office where you are employed. One PwC Africa would certainly be a fantastic legacy to be able to leave behind.
That's phenomenal. Earlier, you mentioned a lot about the role the University of Pretoria has played in your journey. You've mentioned it as a world-class institution.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would agree with that as one of the institutions ranked in the top 1% globally. You certainly are right about that. Taking you back down memory lane, I know that it's been a while, but what are some of the elements of the University of Pretoria that you would never forget?
It's interesting because, not having experienced other university campuses, it's difficult to make comparisons. But certainly, I would say I found the University of Pretoria to be a very safe and welcoming environment. I found it to be a very accommodating institution. And really, it is really in its setup. The university is centered all around the student and what is good and in the best interest of the student. And in that way, it ensures the best possible chances of that student succeeding. I've always found the university to be an institution that promotes global thinking. It may be physically located in Pretoria, in South Africa, but it's always put itself out to be a global institution. One of the things that surprised me when I got to the university and as part of campus life was the number of foreign-based students that were attracted to the university, not only from other parts of the African continent, but indeed other parts of the world. And so in how it has built its brand proposition over time through incredible academic standards, the university has been able to be a magnet that attracts people from all over the world. And certainly, as an African institution that is comfortable playing on the world stage, I found the university to be an unbelievable place. Made some unbelievable friendships during my time as a student. Really enjoyed interacting with some of the lecturers that one contacted from time to time. And I mean, what's there not to like about campus life, right? I know we live in a different era now, and I feel so sorry for the students that have joined the university over the last 20 months or 2 years, that they've been robbed of some of that. And I certainly hope that we return to some of that in future, because in terms of the culture of the university and getting to know the soul of the institution, that is really, really important.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Certainly, describing the university as a think tank, and having spoken with you for so long today, I realize how much of a think tank you have. How much of a think tank you are, thought leader as well. So it's been great speaking with you today. Thanks for making time today.
Thank you, Lennox. It was a privilege to spend time with you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Phenomenal. There you have it. That's the CEO of PwC Africa, Mr. Dion Shango. Well, there you have it. That's my conversation with Dion Shango. I'm so inspired after that. Learning a lot today that leadership is truly a privilege, not a burden. Whilst I realize that loyalty is certainly fragile, it must be preserved at all costs. And indeed, all people are different, and you got to lead with a sense of consultation in your approach. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. My name is Lennox Wasara. Our production team includes Samantha Castle, Alna Schutz, and our sound engineers are Louis Kluter Productions. Till we meet again, goodbye, and remember to listen to other episodes in case you missed one.